The tale opens with a young boy named Errol sharing a meal with his family. Errol's father expresses amazement at his son's composure, mentioning he was unable to rest all night wondering about which hero class awaited his boy. His mother shares in the excitement, while Errol's older sister confidently believes her brother will surpass every one of his peers. Their mother concurs, imagining how her son's natural appeal will draw the attention of all the young ladies, causing Errol's sister to fear he might be stolen from her. Yet Errol remains more grounded than his relatives, believing he'll simply become an ordinary person. In Errol's realm, hero classes represent divine gifts bestowed upon youth at age 10, enabling them to develop specialized abilities. When the blessing ritual commences, students assemble at school where a priest initiates the ceremony with the first child, placing his palm on the boy's head. The child immediately witnesses visions of flames and forged tools, revealing his destiny as a blacksmith. The youngster returns to his father filled with happiness, and the priest continues with the remaining pupils. When Errol's moment arrives, his sister declares he'll surely receive an extraordinary blessing. He approaches the priest while his family celebrates. Onlookers murmur with jealousy about Errol, anticipating he'll obtain elite classes like his parents, Farah the Sword Princess and Leon the Archmage. As Errol nears the priest, he shuts his eyes and concentrates, yet perceives nothing. The priest expresses shock at discovering no blessing, and declares Errol an uncommon case of hero without class. Errol's family immediately loses enthusiasm, feeling deceived and believing his destiny is destroyed as someone without talent. The following day finds Errol practicing basic sword techniques. His parents promise they won't cast him from their home, while Errol insists he's managing well and refuses to become a burden. His sister vows continued support. Observing his family's worry, Errol reminds him he's always studied swordsmanship under his mother's guidance, so he remains capable despite lacking a class, though he privately considers his mother a poor instructor since she consistently overwhelms him during practice with her remarkable power. Following his explanation, Errol's mother feels pleased by her son's wisdom, while his father believes he might secure genuine employment. Growing weary of his family's excessive attention, Errol departs for training. At the practice area, Errol discovers two swordsman students engaged in combat. During their battle, the boys spot Errol and question his presence without a class. He calmly states his intention to train like them, but they explain they're merely enjoying themselves since their class eliminates training requirements. They offer to demonstrate their class-granted abilities and resume sparring. Observing their fluid movements enhanced by the swordsman class, Errol requests to fight them. One boy mocks his boldness for challenging someone with class abilities, but Errol maintains he needs no class. Feeling offended, the boy accepts Errol's challenge to teach him humility. Before combat, the boy ensures Errol retains a protection blessing, a temporary barrier everyone receives at birth that regenerates when avoiding damage. Errol confirms he won't perish from the boy's enhanced attacks and tells him to prepare. Angered by continued provocation, the boy charges Errol and strikes, but Errol easily deflects his amazement. Errol then evades another attack before trapping the boy in a parry. The boy's companion assumes he's playing and urges him to end the match, but he explains that Errol proves more challenging than expected. As they exchange parries, the boy realizes he cannot defeat Errol alone, so he cheats by requesting his partner's assistance. The second boy attacks from behind, but Errol senses the assault and dodges. Watching the boys argue, Errol recognizes their class doesn't aid teamwork, and he moves to defeat them both. The boys notice his approach, but Errol suddenly disappears before emerging beneath one and delivering a knockout punch to his jaw. As his teammate falls, the remaining boy rushes at Errol but trips over his friend, allowing Errol to knock him unconscious as well. With both boys down, Errol calmly declares victory. They grow angry, claiming he attacked while the defenses were lowered. When they demand a rematch, Errol readily agrees. Before the rematch begins, another boy warns him against it, noting they cannot make weak excuses for battlefield failures. After the red-haired boy calls him a disgrace to swordsmen, one attempts to argue, but his friend reminds him of the redhead's elevated status. The redhead approaches Errol and asks if he's Sword Princess Farah's son. Upon Errol's confirmation, the boy compliments his solid swordsmanship training from his mother. However, He reminds Errol that his defeated opponents were merely inexperienced children. Drawing his sword and pointing it toward him, he challenges Errol to genuine combat, declaring he'll prove the swordsman class's true strength. The other boys wonder if he's village security Captain Evan's son. The boy confirms this, and Errol recalls his father previously contacted his mother for monster hunting. Errol thinks the attractive boy resembles nothing like his father and wonders if he'll also become rough-looking. The boy's shoulders tremble as he praises his father as a mighty swordsman and sage mentor. He considers it unjust that despite his father's excellent qualities, Errol's mother unfairly claimed his father's title as the village's strongest swordsman. Hearing these envious words, Errol realizes the boy is venting frustration because he resents his mother. The redhead feels embarrassed being called out, but asks if Errol shares this view. Errol confirms his mother is their village's strongest person, but the boy claims he inherited superior swordsman talent from his father, so he'll defeat Errol to prove his family's supremacy. After composing himself, the boy tells Errol he became a swordsman a year prior and has trained intensively under his father since. Through dedicated practice, he believes victory is assured. However, Errol reminds him he also received instruction from his powerful mother, so defeat isn't certain. Both boys raise their weapons to commence fighting, with the redhead attacking first. Errol parries and counterstrikes as they engage in fierce battle. Watching their exchange, the other boys feel amazed that Errol matches the redhead despite lacking a class. Observing the boys' sword work, Errol acknowledges he's much stronger than the previous two, but his moves stem from anger. Errol waits for a mistake and attacks when an opening appears. However, the boy unleashes a twin slice technique that forces Errol against the wall. The redhead feels surprised his first strike was blocked, but notices Errol suffered injury from the second. Finally losing composure, Errol inquires about the ability, and the boy explains that a swordsman class skill that cannot be blocked by someone classless. Nevertheless, Errol feels determined he can learn to counter it through sufficient practice, earning the redhead's praise for his resilience. Several days later, Errol's sister observes him sleeping late and attempts to wake him with a kiss. He rises before contact, coldly pushing her away with his head. Offended, his sister demands an apology kiss as he leaves for breakfast. Their mother smiles while serving the meal, and the family gathers to eat. When his sister asks about training plans, Errol nods, angering her as she tells him to relax and accept her support. Errol ignores her and departs, leaving his sister wondering why he's trained daily since returning home severely beaten. Farah reassures her that Errol will recover, explaining they share a secret she doesn't know. Taking her daughter outside, she opens a chest filled with broken weapons, revealing Errol's intense training over recent days. While his sister feels surprised, Errol's mother feels happy her boy gained inspiration from dueling other children. Errol's determination also encourages his sister, though she still desires creating a world where classless individuals face no discrimination. While her mother smiles at this noble aspiration, meanwhile in a forest, Errol strikes a practice target on a tree before retreating for an attack. He then executes a twin slice like the redhead and feels satisfied with his power. While Errol considers his beating worthwhile, a goblin silently stalks him in nearby bushes. It springs forward with its club, but Errol turns and defeats it with twin slice, feeling pleased with his skill strength. A large monster roars behind him, and he turns to report the creature's presence to village security, but stops upon hearing a panic scream. Recognizing the familiar voice, Errol realizes he lacks time to summon security before someone gets hurt. Gripping his sword handle, he rushes into the forest, mentally assuring himself of his safety. Reaching the source, Errol peers from bushes and discovers the redhead with a bloodied arm. He notices a giant hobgoblin looming over the boy and wonders about its appearance. Errol realizes the redhead was also practicing and defeated wild goblins, attracting the leading hobgoblin. While the hobgoblin corners the boy, Errol positions himself behind it and prepares attacking from the optimal angle. Taking a deep breath, Errol prepares as the redhead thinks his end has come. The hobgoblin raises its club for the final blow, but suddenly Errol cuts it down with twin slice. After the monster falls, Errol thinks he's finally mastered the technique's footwork. The redhead tries walking but stumbles into Errol's arms. Noticing the boy lost a protection blessing, Errol asks about holy water for healing wounds. The boy silently observes a shattered water bottle on the ground, so Errol offers his own holy water. After drinking, his wounds vanish and the redhead feels annoyed by Errol's growing strength. Errol notices his energy returned, and the boy thanks him for the water before asking again about his powerful skill. Errol calmly reminds him it's merely twin slice, but the boy asks how he learned it without a class, knowing ordinary people cannot acquire special skills. Errol explains he pushed training to extremes for this achievement. Feeling confused, the redhead listens as Errol explains he learned the skill by adapting to its timing and footwork. Errol tells the redhead he was the most valuable resource, since he helped him understand the skill after defeating him dozens of times with it. While the boy feels overwhelmed by this information, Errol reveals he's been perfecting the twin slice skill to defeat him in their rematch. Impressed by Errol's dedication, the redhead accepts the rematch challenge. When Errol asks if he's certain, the boy says it's the least he can do after being saved and healed. Errol feels surprised he knows how to repay favors, and the boy feels insulted by his low expectations. Soon both boys prepare with their swords and begin dueling with simultaneous twin slices. Feeling shocked that Errol blocked both strikes, the redhead gets hit by a surprise attack. Wondering what happened, Errol explains he added a third slice. The redhead reminds Errol it's called twin slice, but Errol explains that lacking a predefined class skill, he can shape his technique however he chooses. He reveals this was his first successful use of the third strike, leaving the boy more frustrated. The redhead believes a swordsman's skill shouldn't lose to anyone, so Errol offers to prove otherwise in another match. Both boys raise their sword again and the redhead calms down, thinking his speed advantage over Errol. As both unleash twin slices, the redhead watches for Errol's third slice. However, the third slice's speed still catches him off guard and knocks him down despite blocking it. Errol points his sword at the defeated boy, telling him this result was expected. When the redhead asks why his third strike is so fast, Errol explains he learned this trick from him as well. Errol reveals he controls his first two strikes to be slower and applies all strength to the third strike to catch opponents off guard. Feeling completely outmatched, the redhead grinds his teeth in defeat as Errol walks away victorious. Several days later, during family dinner, Farah reveals that Evan's son has departed to train at Brescia. Surprised by this news, Errol asks what Brescia is, and his mother explains it's a city of swords. She tells him she trained at a guild there before marriage, and Errol feels excited to visit the city and explore his full potential as a classless hero. 5 whole years go by after that day, and our main character finally decides to leave home and head to Brescia, a kingdom famous for its sword fighting. Both his mom and Captain Evans learn their skills in Brescia, and Errol wants to become the absolute best, just like they are. On his journey, he meets a few strangers who join him on the cart. 2 of them are really skilled swordsmen. One guy is a barbarian-type fighter, and the woman is known for fighting with 2 swords at once. They both want to improve their skills in Brescia too, but they keep arguing and can't seem to stand each other. The cart driver tells them to calm down since they're all heading to the same place, but the guy is really sexist and keeps telling the woman she should go back home to cook. Before they can argue anymore, the driver suddenly yells at them to grab their swords because they got trouble ahead and sees a whole group of orcs, led by their massive leader, blocking the road. They clearly don't plan on letting anyone pass alive. 2 kids in the cart get scared and beg the barbarian guy to protect them. But the barbarian turns out to be a total jerk and coward who says he's not risking his life for strangers, and he jumps off the cart and runs away. The woman follows him, saying everyone needs to look out for themselves in this world. The cart driver gets worried, wondering if he can outrun the orc horde with his cart full of passengers. But before he can try anything, Errol quietly gets down from the cart and starts walking toward the monsters. The driver tells him to back off and run for his life, but Errol just ignores him and rushes toward the first orc, stabbing it straight through the heart. The driver is amazed by his incredible speed and accuracy, while Errol keeps using a teleport-like dash move, disappearing and reappearing in front of different orcs, taking them down one after another. Unfortunately, he ends up surrounded by orcs on all sides, which means he can't use his dash move anymore. But to the driver's shock, Errol uses a legendary move called the blade dance, where he spins around in a circle, cutting down everyone around him all at once. The cart driver can't understand how Errol can use that skill, since it's only supposed to be used by female swordsmen with the Sword Princess class. But Errol doesn't care about traditional gender rules, so he runs toward the orc leader, dodges its attack perfectly, jumps on top of it, and drives the sword deep into the orc's skull, killing it instantly. He finally walks back to the shock driver and tells him they can continue to Brajan now. When one of the kids asks what class of swordsman he is, he simply says he doesn't have any class, which completely shocks everyone. He remembers how 5 years ago when he showed his mother a new twin blade skill he learned. She thought she was seeing things. But when Errol told her he's training to copy any skill he sees, she became extremely happy and promised to teach him all the skills from the Sword Princess class. Back in the present, the driver wakes him up and tells him they've arrived at Braja, the land of swords. Errol gets off the cart and sees the town center packed with people who all have swords on their belts. Errol turns to the driver and asks if he's an advanced swordsman. At first, the driver says he's just a cart driver, but Errol knows that only skilled swordsmen could recognize the moves he was using. The cart driver admits he's from the Holy Knights class, which is pretty impressive, but he got tired of fighting all the time. So he sometimes just relaxes and pretends to be a normal driver. The Holy Knight realizes this is probably Errol's first time in the city and tells him he needs to find a guild first, because without one, he can't fight in any tournaments. And in this city, fighting and winning tournaments is the main way swordsmen prove they're good and make money. Errol says he doesn't care about money. He just wants to fight the strongest swordsman this place has. The driver warns him to watch out for toxic corporate guilds because they can drain your soul and not in a good way. With that, the driver leaves while Errol walks into the city, looking at all the different people advertising their guilds, higher members, and swordsmen lining up to try joining the better guilds. On the way, he accidentally bumps into a blonde girl who immediately clings to him, telling him she's from a famous guild and wants him to join. Errol immediately gets suspicious because she seems really desperate for members, so he refuses. But the girl won't leave him alone and keeps bothering him to join their guild over and over. But Errol isn't easily swayed and keeps refusing. He asks her which guild is the strongest around here, and she reluctantly tells him the Shadowblade Guild is one of the strongest right now since it has 8 different classes of swordsmen. He asks for directions and immediately heads toward that guild. He gets stopped at the entrance by a guard who directs him to the reception desk for testing. At reception, he finds a huge line of young swordsmen hoping to get into the famous guild, which makes Errol excited too, wondering what kind of amazing people he'll have to fight. But when it's his turn to register, the receptionist laughs at him for being classless, saying only people with advanced swordsman classes can apply for the guild trials. Errol insists he can pass their tests, but the receptionist refuses to register him, feeling disappointed. He decides to leave when he sees 3 ranked swordsmen enter the hall who get treated like celebrities. He doesn't really care about all that attention though, and turns to check out other guilds. But one by one, every guild rejects him because he doesn't have a class. Tired and frustrated, he goes back into the city and takes out a letter his mother gave him, telling him to find her old guild since they would definitely help him. He wonders if his mom knew he'd have this much trouble, but he's thankful anyway. Before he can even read the letter, the blonde girl latches onto him again, saying they're still willing to take him in. But Errol refuses again. She literally starts begging him to join, asking him to do it as charity, and points at a beautiful guild house, claiming it's hers. This surprises Errol a bit, but the girl explains that their guild called Dragon Fong used to be the best in the country for a very long time, but lately things have gotten really bad, and they're currently the weakest. But she wants to bring it back to its former glory. The name Dragon Fong suddenly sounds familiar. He remembers his mom once told him about her guild leader who was a dual-wielding swordsman and named the guild Dragon Fong after a special move. He decides to go in with her, which makes her really happy. But the moment they enter the room, he finds an old drunk man with only one arm lying on the couch. The man tells Errol to go somewhere else since this guild is doomed and walks away. The girl tells him that's her father, who used to be the second best swordsman in the city, but ever since losing his arm, he's never been the same. Errol surprises her by saying he still wants to join the guild. This makes the girl really happy, and she quickly writes up an agreement, which Errol fills out and hands back to her. She reads it and asks why he left the class section blank. That's when Errol tells her it's because he doesn't have a class. The girl snaps and pulls out a sword, saying she thought he might be an advanced class swordsman since he was acting so hard to get. But before she can say more, the door opens and a red-haired beautiful woman named Ray enters the room. The girl immediately runs to her, crying that this classless guy tricked her into joining the guild. This gets Ray's immediate attention, and she looks at Errol, saying she never thought she'd see him here. Errol is confused and asks how she knows him. Ray looks surprised, saying they were from the same village and trained together. That still doesn't ring any bells for him, but finally he realizes that the red-haired boy he fought so many times when he was young was actually a girl. The blonde girl knows about the story too and asks Ray if this is the classless guy who beat her when they were young, because she always thought that story was made up. Ray is still hung up on that loss and challenges Errol to a match right away. The fight starts and Ray immediately uses a twin slash attack, which Errol thinks he can counter. But to his surprise, Ray slashes blast through his own and hit him straight in the chest. This confuses him. But Ray reveals she has a power swordsman class, which is why she can use a sword that's 5 times heavier than a normal sword, meaning each of her strikes has 5 times the power. Errol is impressed that she's kept her speed even while using a heavier sword, but that speed is nothing compared to his own. The next time she attacks, he creates an afterimage of himself which distracts Ray while he appears behind her and hits her in the back. Ray gets confused and tries again, but the same thing happens. She can't believe Errol is using a technique that only the most advanced swordsmen use, while Errol realizes she's too tough to take down with his normal attacks. Ray knows this too and tries to end the fight with her heavy blows. But Errol uses his mother's signature counter move, which brings Ray to her knees. And the fight is over just like that. With that, the blonde girl's attitude completely changes and she welcomes him again to their guild, telling him their guild is in serious debt right now. To get out of debt, they'll have to enter tournaments and fight as a three-person team against other guilds who will have all 5 members on their teams. Errol is excited at the thought of fighting strong opponents and looks forward to the opportunity to improve his skills even more. The next morning, Errol wakes up in his own room in a new bed that now belongs to him. It takes him a little while to remember everything that's happened since he arrived. He now belongs to the same legendary guild his mom worked with, which is a big deal for him. So he decides not to let her down and make this guild great again. He freshens up and walks into the living room where the blonde girl and Ray are already up, chatting by the fire about the upcoming tournaments. The blonde girl immediately pulls Errol into conversation, saying the tournament starts next week, and since they now have 3 members instead of 2, they're eligible to participate. She tells Errol it's going to be super hard since it'll be an elimination-style tournament with one-on-one matches, but every guild will probably have 5 members, which puts them at a huge disadvantage. So they'll each have to defeat more than one opponent if they want to survive even the first round. The girl is pretty optimistic though, saying it should still be okay since their guild already has 2 B-rank swordsmen. So unless they end up fighting an A-rank swordsman, they should be evenly matched. Errol is new to this ranking system and asks what exactly these ranks mean. The girl explains there are 5 total ranks from A to D, where A is the highest achievable rank, and out of all the swordsmen in Braja, only 20 are considered A rank, while D rank is for complete beginners who barely know how to hold a sword. She proudly says both she and Ray are B rank swordsmen, and since Errol managed to beat Ray in a fair fight, that means he's also B rank just like them. Considering they have 3 B rank swordsmen, they should have a good chance in at least the starting rounds. With that, the girl goes into the kitchen, leaving Errol to his thoughts. As Ray is leaving, he grabs her and asks about her abilities as a power swordsman. She still seems annoyed about losing yesterday, but explains that one of her abilities is to harden her outer mana shield to protect herself from most weaker attacks. Errol thinks about this for a while, wondering exactly how he can learn such a valuable technique, when suddenly he gets an idea. He tells Ray to hit him with her sheathed sword. Ray says she's not interested, but Errol grabs her hand, begging her to do it. But Ray seems to be getting the wrong idea, thinking Errol is into some kinky stuff, though she's not completely against the idea and tells him maybe they should start with something more normal. Errol doesn't notice the attractive girl in front of him, realizes they're thinking different things, and clears up that he wants her to hit him so he can learn how to use a skill to harden his mana protection shield, which will be really effective when fighting multiple attackers, since you're more likely to get hit in those situations. She's shocked by this and asks if he's gone insane, since skills are only given by the divine grace of the goddess and can't be learned. But Errol doesn't believe in that and tells her to stop talking nonsense, since he already learned skills like twin blade slice and instant transmission. This shuts Ray up, and she gives in and decides to try it once. They go to the training ground where she hands him her sword, warning that her sword is 5 times heavier than any normal sword, and without the brute strength skill, Errol will never be able to swing it. But Errol shuts down her doubts by grabbing her sword, unsheathing it, and swinging it with surprising grace and ease. Ray is left speechless again, asking how the hell he can do all this while being classless, and without any skills. Errol replies that whatever he's learned through dedication and daily practice. He promises to match their natural talent through pure hard work and effort. This changes Ray's attitude, and she apologizes for her comments, takes back the sword, and agrees to the training, but warns him she won't hold back. Errol agrees and tries to flirt, but that moment has passed and the woman smacks him in the face with her sheathed sword. A little while later, the blonde girl comes running down to the training ground, breathless and stressed, telling Errol and Ray that she just found out which guild they're up against, and it's not good news. She tells them the team they're facing is none other than members of the top guild, Blackblade, which is over A-ranked swordsmen led by their leader, Geo, who's known to be as vicious as a snake. But the girl has no plans of backing down and gives them a fiery speech, saying they'll do their best to defeat their opponents. She then looks down at Errol, who's on the ground after being beaten by Ray during the training session. The girl asks if Errol is dead, but Ray says they're just doing special training. But the girl thinks Ray is just taking out her stress on the new guy. Errol finally gets up saying he's hungry after getting beaten up so much and wants some food. A week flies by during training, and finally the day of the competition arrives. People from all over the country gather at the Coliseum discussing the match, while Errol is completely blown away by how huge the venue actually is. The girl overhears people saying the Dragon Fawn Guild crashed and burned, which make her angry, but Ray manages to stop her. Errol realizes people also gamble here, putting money on which teams will win. The girl tells him the current odds in their fight are 20-1. Errol says that's pretty impressive, but the girl shouts at him to shut up, since it means no one in the entire city believes they can win against the Blackblade Guild. But this could also work in their favor, since if they manage to win, they can make tons of money from a single match. Ray tries to calm her down, but she's too fired up, with fire burning in her eyes. She says they have to win this match no matter what, because if they lose, there won't be a guild anymore. And to make sure they become super rich after their match, she's taken out a loan using the guild house as collateral. So if they win, their lives will be changed forever, and no one will talk about them as a crappy guild that used to be good. Ray asks what happens if they lose, and the girl replies it doesn't even matter, because if they lose, they'll have lost everything anyway. Suddenly, she gets called out by a guy who turns out to be Geo, the leader of the Blackblade Guild, who starts putting down the girl and explains that he pulled some strings to make sure their very first match is between their guilds. It's going to be an easy fight for them, which they're bound to win, and along with that they can completely destroy the last remains of the guild that used to be the best ones. He tells her not to worry though. If she manages to win, that would mean she has the best guild. But that would only happen if she manages to defeat their A-ranked swordsmen. But with a classless loser on their team, it doesn't look likely. With that, he laughs at his own cleverness and wishes him good luck before walking away. Soon they enter the arena, where Errol wonders if Geo himself not fighting increases their chances of winning. But Ray tells him their entire team is A-ranked, so it doesn't matter. Plus, their current lineup seems more aggressive than usual. Finally, the time for battle arrives, and the announcer introduces the contestants from the Blackblade side. A green-haired boy with a fencer class is sent forward, who arrogantly declares he'll defeat the entire opposing team. The commentator gets surprised when he sees that from the Dragon Fong's side, Errol, the classless swordsman, is going to fight. The fencer boy seems uninterested since it won't matter how quickly he defeats a classless nobody, but decides to do it anyway, so he can then face the girls. The match starts, and within seconds, the fencer dashes forward and stabs Errol through the chest, surprising everyone with his speed. But while the blonde girl gets worried about Errol, Ray tells her to look carefully. It turns out it was simply Errol's shadow. The fencer seems surprised, but it doesn't faze him, and he turns around and lunges again, only to find another afterimage. He realizes this won't be over as quickly as he hoped, as he gets surrounded by images of Errol. But it doesn't matter to him, as he plans to use his speed to stab them all. The afterimages all attack at once, and the fencer slashes through them all, only to get stabbed by the real Errol, who managed to create 3 afterimages, which is supposed to be really difficult. The fencer falls to the ground, and the match is over just like that. Errol mentions that his mother used to practice with him while using 5 images at once, and that was her going easy. The commentator is shocked as the crowd erupts with cheers for the classless fighter. He realizes that even though he tried the same technique as the fencer boy, his wasn't as refined, which means he'll have to work on it even more. The next match Errol faces is against a dual wielder who pushes the attack with a constant barrage of sword strikes. But Errol manages to block them all before using the twin/attack to take his opponent down. With 2 down, the next opponent he faces turns out to be a reverse grip dagger wielder who's more careful and uses a bunch of martial arts techniques alongside his blade. But that's no use since Errol is too fast for him and confuses him with afterimages before striking him down from behind. Ray and the blonde girl are both shocked that this guy just defeated 3 A-rank swordsmen without breaking a sweat in record time, which actually fills the girl with hope of actually winning the match. The next match turns out to be a little more difficult since he's matched up against a shield swordsman who's known to be tough, and since Errol can't land any critical hits, he's forced to dance around and slowly wear down his protection bit by bit. His opponent screams at him that he can't possibly be classless, but Errol replies that whatever he's achieved is through sheer hard work and nothing else. The big guy tells him hard work won't take him far when up against natural talent as he rushes forward with shield bash skill, but Errol manages to use one of his mother's signature techniques, foresight. He predicts his enemy's movements and manages to kick the shield down. With that, he uses a technique he learned from his last opponent, the martial arts guy, and kicks the brute in the stomach. He then picks up the shield and starts moving forward. The brute gets enraged and tries to attack, but Errol manages to parry before dashing forward and using the same shield bash to destroy his opponent. People start rioting and calling him a liar who isn't revealing his rank in class. So the organizers bring his class ID to the magic crystal ball and broadcast live that he indeed is classless. With that cleared up, the next opponent is announced, and this one seems different. This swordsman is named Masamune, and he's from the samurai lineage in the east with a curved sword called a katana. Before Masamune even takes his sword out, Errol senses danger and gets ready, knowing this fight won't be as easy as the others. He realizes Masamune is planning to use his ultimate skill, and like a snake is waiting to strike. But Errol is curious, so he moves forward, putting himself in danger. The moment he enters the swordsman's range, Masamune whips out his sword toward Errol, but somehow Errol is faster and disappears behind him. Masamune is shocked, but Errol tells him he's genuinely the fastest person he's seen in the city. But unfortunately for him, his own mother was much faster, so he's used to it. With that, he uses the sword princess's ultimate skill, stabbing his enemy multiple times and defeating him. With that, everyone is shocked into silence as the supposedly weakest member of the weakest guild just completely destroyed the strongest members of the strongest guild. Errol walks back toward Ray and the blonde girl, feeling content that they should have earned enough money to keep the guild going. That evening when they return to the guild house, they immediately start celebrating with drinks all around. Errol is still shocked that the blonde girl is old enough to drink, but she says she's a grown woman even if she looks a little small. She still can't believe Errol single-handedly defeated 5 A-rank swordsmen from the best guild in the country all alone. She decides she must try to win him over since he's her ticket out of poverty and obscurity. She tries to propose marriage, saying she can fulfill all his desires, But Errol is a true independent person and rejects her outright, saying he prefers someone like Ray instead. This immediately makes Ray blush as she gets up from her seat, yelling at Errol to stop saying stuff like that just because he wants to turn the blonde girl down. But Errol is seriously considering it. He asks why she would think he's making fun of her, and she replies that when they were young, he called her a man during their sword fight. She says everyone who's met her has said she has no feminine charms. But Errol can see two big feminine charms right there in front of him and disagrees. The blonde girl realizes Ray has absolutely no idea what her biggest strengths are and how she could use them, so she doesn't really need to worry about her. With that, she starts rubbing Errol's legs, saying he must be tired from all the fighting during the day, and tells him to meet her in the bedroom. Ray immediately gets embarrassed, telling the girl to stop saying weird things. But the girl smiles slightly, saying she's just going to give him a well-deserved massage after a tiring day. To her surprise, though, Errol says he'd rather have a massage from Ray. His idea of a massage is getting pounded by Ray in the training ground as he tries to master the reinforcement magic that Ray uses so easily thanks to her class and skills. The blonde girl watches from the balcony, wondering if Errol has any idea what a massage actually is. The constant noise ends up waking the girl's father, who comes down to the training ground completely hungover, complaining about the noise, saying they don't need to take out their frustration about losing the tournament before it even began in the middle of the night. The girl tells him they actually won their match, which was against the current best guild. This grabs his attention, but he thinks the Black Blade must have sent their B or C rank newbies as cannon fodder. But the girl surprises him even more by saying all their opponents were A rank, and not only that, but Errol defeated them all on his own without any help. This shocks her dad out of his hangover as he looks at Errol, bruised and battered, wondering if this kid is really that strong. The girl says she made a bunch of bets, and because Errol swept the enemy team, she hit the jackpot. And now not only are they out of debt, but they also have enough money to cover their operating costs. Her dad isn't so optimistic though, saying that by some luck this kid is actually that strong. He'll soon get recruited by bigger, more influential, and richer guilds, so she shouldn't get her hopes up. The girl tells him not to worry about that since she's going to marry Errol, which means they'll be bound for life. Errol announces he's not going to do anything like that, but soon turns his attention to her father, saying the girl might be stubborn and silly, but at least she's not a loser who gives up on everything. This is clearly a dig at the girl's dad, who looks at him dangerously, but Errol doesn't get the hint and continues, saying he should stop moping around and start acting his age since he still has one remaining hand and can wield a sword in that hand. This triggers her dad, who immediately grabs Errol by the collar, telling him to avoid talking about things he doesn't understand. He tells Errol that a dual-wielding swordsman who can't dual-wield is nothing but worthless. Errol says he doesn't agree since he himself is a classless swordsman who's still competing and try to rise in this world. With that, her dad pushes him away and walks back upstairs. The girl and Ray immediately come to Errol's side, asking if he's okay. The girl apologizes for her dad's behavior while thanking Errol for speaking up. Errol says even after losing his arm and being washed up for so long, her dad is still incredibly strong, and it's a waste that he's refusing to use his incredible strength and experience. He thinks to himself about all the cool skills he could learn from a dual-wielding swordsman and promises himself he'll motivate the girl's father, Rod, to take up the sword again. The girl hears about his desire to learn new skills and suggests he take on some of the dungeons near the city. Errol has no idea what dungeons are, so Ray tells him dungeons are underground caves where monsters spawn by the hundreds and the entire place is full of traps, making it one of the best places to learn new skills and level up with more real-life battle experience, which will help them during the Sword God Cup. Errol has no idea what she's talking about, so she explains that the city hosts a tournament every year where the best swordsmen in the country participate to show their skills and prove they're the single best swordsman in the country. The blonde girl immediately takes out a form and tells Errol to fill out if he wants to participate, but to Ray's horror, he rips it up right in front of them. Ray is confused and asks if he doesn't want to participate in the contest, but Errol says the girl was trying to trick him and gave him a marriage certificate to sign instead. The girl laughs, saying she was just testing the waters, but Errol is done being nice and grabs her in a chokehold to teach her a lesson. The next morning, Errol wakes up to find the girl trying to attack him, but he dodges her and ties her to the bed before leaving. Later that day, they all go to the dungeons together, where the girl explains that everyone gets to stand in teleportation circles through which they can teleport to whichever dungeon level they want, but you can only go to levels you've been to before. The girl says she's reached level 12, while Ray has reached level 14. Errol immediately decides to go with Ray to the 14th level, but the girl says it doesn't work that way. He needs to physically be at a level to be able to go there again. That's disappointing since Errol wanted to fight the strongest monsters he could find from the start. But the girl tells him not to worry, as she knows a really quick route that will lead them to the lower floors very quickly. They agree to plan, but the girl tries to get Errol all alone, saying Ray can continue her level 14 run since Errol would need 2 guides, and starts dragging him away. But Errol isn't so easily manipulated and asks Ray to come with them. They enter the first floor where they're immediately attacked by 2 knights in armor. Errol draws his sword and starts clashing with one of them, while Ray takes the other one. He's surprised to notice that even though they're wearing heavy armor, the knights move with incredible agility. But it's nothing he can't deal with, so he uses his dash step and chops off the knight's head, only to realize the entire armor is empty and is being powered by the mana of the dungeon itself. The knight starts moving again, even without its head, and Ray says they have no real weakness and don't feel pain either. So Errol decides to go for the legs, which works out beautifully as the magic knights collapse on the ground. Ray also deals with her opponent, saying they'll soon regenerate, so they need to move on. Before moving further though, Errol asks the blonde girl what her class is, and she very proudly says she's a fencer and promises to teach him anything he wants in the training ground or in bed. But Errol rejects her once again and moves on. Before entering the second level though, they hear cries for help coming from the door. When they move closer, they find a man covered in blood, kneeling on the floor and begging for help. Ray suggests taking him above ground, but the man refuses, saying his friends are still inside and they got badly hurt by a trap. He begs him to help rescue his friends, but the girl immediately gets down to business, asking for money in return for help. To her surprise, the man even pays her a good amount for money he won gambling. But Errol senses something wrong. While walking behind the man, he notices that whenever someone loses that much blood, they can't even sit on their own without holy water, let alone walk all the way back to a dangerous room. He realizes the blood and injuries are completely fake, but decides to keep this information to himself just because he thinks this might lead to something interesting and fun. The man takes him to a secret room where they find a trail of blood and a puddle in the center with 1 single gold coin. The sight of the coin immediately tempts the blonde girl, who goes to pick it up when a teleport circle appears beneath them. Ray realizes this was a setup while the man grins at them, saying he got paid well to do such an easy job. But to his surprise, the magic circle teleported him along with the others. They all appear on a floor that even Ray hasn't seen, meaning it's even lower than the 14th floor, but there are no signs of strong enemies yet. The guy who pretended to be hurt is shaking from fear as he stammers that this is supposed to be the lowest floor of the dungeon where the advanced sword god can be found. Suddenly, a knight with rainbow enchanted armor appears in front of them, but the girl refuses to believe the story of the sword god class, which everyone thought was just a myth. Errol realizes the trouble they're in and immediately pushes the girl down, as the sword god sends an aerial slash so strong it breaks the dungeon walls. Without wasting any time, the sword god attacks Errol, who barely manages to get his sword up in time, blocking the attack. Even though he gets shoved into the wall, he realizes he survived that just because of the reinforcement magic training he got from Ray. He tries slashing back at his opponent, but the knight is extremely quick and uses all the advanced moves to dash back. With that, he smiles, saying this is a good opportunity to test himself. This completely shocks his party members while he uses the same divine step technique to close the distance and pushes the attack, hitting the knight with a barrage of strikes which get blocked. The knight is forced to back off but uses a skill which causes gravity in the room to increase, forcing the others to the floor. But Errol easily maintains his stance since he's faced the same thing before when he was younger, training against his mom. He used all his strength back then just to be able to stand, so when his mom attacked, he wasn't able to do anything. But this time is different. He uses the gold coin to nullify the attack. which creates a small opening, and Errol uses it to its full potential, using one of the strongest abilities called Infinite Break. The knight shatters into pieces after that attack, shocking everyone present in the room. He regains his strength with some holy water, and then they all safely exit the dungeon through the teleportation spell. Back in the bar, Rod is drinking again when he overhears a conversation between three young idiots talking about how they tricked the new members of the Dragon Fawn Guild into a trap, and they're most likely never coming back. Rod walks up to them and breaks their table with a single punch, ordering them to reveal everything they know. But he's interrupted by Geo, who calls him a good-for-nothing drunkard. Rod immediately realizes this must have been set up by Geo, which means the chances of his daughter's survival are slim to none. Completely broken, he lunges toward Geo but gets pushed aside like nothing while he kneels on the ground, wishing he could save his little girl. But a sudden voice from the door catches his attention, and he turns around to see the blonde girl along with Errol and Ray enter the tavern, talking about how hungry they are. The girl notices her dad and the ugly Geo, but gets surprised when Rod hugs her tightly, thanking God for keeping his daughter safe. Ray calls Geo out, saying he got all the information out of his accomplice, who confessed it was all Joe's plan. But just like any politician, he straight up refuses to admit it, saying everyone is responsible for their own safety in the dungeons, and Errol thinks that's actually a valid point. Rod tells Geo he won't get away with this, but Geo simply calls him a drunkard, washed up piece of trash, and leaves the room while Errol wonders what new tricks he'll have to deal with now. But that's where the story ends for now. Thank you for reading. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. See you next time.